Okay, I've just come across this interview, and honestly, my blood is boiling. I am furious. This is the most disgusting display of racism I've ever come across. For somebody who used to be a public prosecutor, you should be ashamed of yourself. How dare you continue to create a narrative like this about us 30 years ago? At what point do you stop and look at yourself? The whole world is throwing you away, is telling you, no, sorry, we're not interested with you. And you still have an attitude like this. And to continue to drive the narrative of racism, you should be ashamed of yourself, absolutely ashamed of yourself. You're using a news station that is broadcast by the SABC, which is literally on the brink of failure, by the way, thanks to the ANC, but you won't admit that. This is one of the few channels that get out to the broader audience. So you're driving the narrative of woe is me. You're driving the narrative of failure. You're driving the narrative that you're doing your best. And there's nobody holding you guys accountable. Your Auditor General told you in your parliamentary audit report that no accountability is one of the reasons this country is failing, that corruption is one of the reasons this country is failing. And you still decide to go and have an interview like this.
But to the South Africa's sovereignty, what dangers does the white genocide rhetoric present to the work done by South Africa in mending a past of segregation and pain? Social Justice Chair at Stellenbosch University, Professor Thuli joins us for this discussion. Good morning, Professor, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Masichava, and to viewers. Thank you for the privilege.
Firstly, Professor, how do you assess the legality of AfriForum's efforts to mobilize international pressure on the South African government?
Well, legally, it's a very difficult story, Masichava, because we have to say they violated the law or a right, and who has been harmed by that violation. And then if there's anybody who's been harmed, that person or group of persons may take the matter to court as a class action or as an individual action. But morally, what AfriForum has done is reprehensible.
Excuse me? Morally? Your audit report shows more than 456 billion in irregular and wasteful expenditure. And you want to talk to me about morals? You think it's right that you rock up in these townships in these fancy 5 million rand cars? Where's morals?
All right. If you would just expand on that, Professor, because my next question was actually going to be, do you think AfriForum's actions and advocacy are aligned with the principles of social justice, and I mean, particularly in the context of South Africa's history and ongoing struggles with racism and inequality?
Inequality. What the F have you guys done in the last 30 years? The inequality is in politics, my darling. The inequality is the politicians who are so fucking rich. Look at your dress. Look at your hair, look at your jewelry. And then the poor, who is the public, who you keep trying to pull money out of, siphoning us, squeezing us like a rock.
I think AfriForum is struggling with the reality of being ordinary.
No, my darling. AfriForum is exposing the fact that you have failed to make all of us ordinary. And in doing so, none of us are ordinary.
South Africa requires all of us to be ordinary.
Wow. Is that the level of standards we hold on each other? Don't worry, South Africa. We have this beautiful country, but our government's expectation is that we're just ordinary. Just ordinary. You don't have to be exceptional. You don't have to be amazing. You just need to be ordinary with your little McDonald's plastic table carry around desk thing. But do not be exceptional.
Colonialism and apartheid
30 years.
made white people special people. And Justice Cameron writes,
You know, says the political people who are squandering trillions. I mean, the 456 I refer to is just the money I could actually find. There's so much more.
in one of his articles about how he was last among whites because he was from a poor family and his father was in jail. But the one thing that gave him solace was that at least he wasn't black. And I think ordinary white people find solace in the fact that they were not black.
Sorry. So one guy says that, and now the rest of us have to be painted with the same brush. It's the same as X. There's this tiny little community in South Africa that hate each other. And then there's the rest of us, millions and millions of us who love the country, who love each other. And then she has the cheek to go and paint all of us with the same brush. Because, my darling, nobody in this country should be ordinary.
Now that in the news South Africa, they're ordinary. I think some white people, and AfriForum in particular, is seeking to reverse the wheel and find some reason special again. And they seem to have found an ally in the American president.
Or you may be scared that at some point you're going to have to turn around to the people of South Africa and say, funk, we wasted 30 years. We squandered 30 years. We stole trillions. I'm sorry, but let's talk about apartheid.
Clearly, that is neither compatible with social justice nor compatible with human rights as we celebrate Human Rights Month.
You want to talk about human rights?
South Africa, which is resonant with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that requires everyone to be treated as an equal.
But then how are we even being treated as an equal? Like the irony and the stupidity and the clashing of facts that come out of this party, I want to pull my hair out. It's so effing ridiculous. I cannot understand how it's taken us this long to get to this point.
Now, Professor Minister Mkhunu challenged the AfriForum to provide evidence on the alleged increase in farm murders. What kind of evidence do you think would be necessary to support AfriForum's claims?
Well, it's just simple evidence that would be valid in a court of law. The minister has indicated that of the statistics that are on the board, only one person who was killed in that quarter, in the last quarter of 2024.
See, now we can keep repeating the same facts. The facts are that this many white people died and this many black people died. That argument's dead, my friends. That argument's gone, similar to your race card. What you need to be looking at is the metrics at which you report these crimes, because that's what you're not telling us. It's the same as the metrics you use to account for how many houses you built. Because in the audit report, the Parliament audit report, the freaking auditor tells you that you have no metrics. There are no metrics. So the fact that you put a roof on 4 walls does not account for the fact that you built a house. It even says there, 80% of your projects, some of the houses didn't even have electricity. Eh? So it's not the fact that 5 white people die for every 100 black people. That's great. Perfect. Look at the metrics under which you're reporting it.
classified as a white farmer. Even that is not enough to justify the white genocide, because you would still have to look at who was killed and by whom were they killed. I must indicate, Masichaba, that one person being killed or murdered is one too many. And therefore, I'm not saying that if one
Says the people who won't fund the police.
killed, that means nothing. I think what we're contesting is racializing the murders, and they will have to provide that evidence.
My sweetie, it's a targeted attack on purpose, statistically showing that it gets worse after one of these weird political events where you all want to scream the Murmur song.
Killed where and which police station were these murders reported to? Yes, police stations do underreport matters such as rape, but you can't underreport murder.
Huh? Sorry, what? You can underreport rape, but you can't underreport murder. I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Is AfriForum
I suppose you're
causing
dead
damage
anyway.
to South Africa's reputation on the world stage?
Absolutely. The AfriForum, in its selfish quest for justice as just us, or justice as just themselves.
Zondo Commission, state capture, just ourselves. The ANC is a just ourselves party. I mean, the irony. You know what? These people are looking at us and unventing their guilt, because this is exactly what they're doing. What they're doing is exactly what they're talking about.
Is damaging brand South Africa unnecessarily, because of course, we know now, based on their claims, the American president has withdrawn.
Based on their claims, let's finish watching it before I rant.
South Africans who were relying on aid, and these are NGOs that are serving white and black people, and the people who are getting jobs from these NGOs are black and white.
One white for every 200 black. I mean, come on. You're scraping the barrel, my darling.
And it has damaged them. It has damaged relations between South Africa and America, because America.
No. See, maybe when we listen to our politicians, what we need to start doing now is replace the word, every time they say South Africa, replace it with ANC. So technically all she's saying is they destroyed the relationship between the ANC and the American government. South Africa's fine, my darling. It's you we're all worried about.
Has taken an approach that as long as a white person is harmed, then it will take issue, and it doesn't care that there is gender.
And yet nobody's talking about the fact that all of this was still being discussed in the Biden administration. So it was already on paper. It just hadn't gone through the proper signatures.
Discrimination at a social level, not in law. There's gender murders, or women are murdered far more than white farmers. And I do insist that anybody being murdered is wrong, and it is one too many. But what White Forum is doing.
How dare you? How dare you do this? I don't ever want to see a cross hanging on your neck. I don't ever want to see you walking out of a church. You are disgusting.
Selfish first is harming everyone, incidentally, including its own members.
Now, the recent crime statistics, Professor, appear to contradict AfriForum's claims about the prevalence of farm murders. So how do you think this new information will impact the public perception of AfriForum's narrative around farm murders?
think the one thing AfriForum.
Oh, now they're showing the picture of the cops arresting the people, because this is the video that's going to reach the masses. It's terrible that the real opinion is shared on carte blanche and YouTube and the whatnots, where the people, the people whose vote we're really trying to impact only gets to listen and see this bullshit. Because we know for a fact that security companies are predominantly the people who make the original arrest. The cops just come and pick everyone up.
Has done is to exacerbate existing strained race relations and putting a whole lot of white people on the defensive in trying to dissociate themselves with this white exceptionalism.
My darling, the whole of South Africa is trying to disassociate themselves from the ANC. And don't put words in our mouths.
This white supremacy that any one white person killed is one too many, whereas any human being killed is one too many.
Oh,
we should be on the quest to make sure that nobody gets killed. I mean, AfriForum says nothing.
There has to be a law against this.
White farmers kill farm laborers or kill people who are passing through their farms. We never hear their voice, and yet they claim to be a civil rights movement. And what's clear is AfriForum is only concerned about Afrikaners, which is okay. If justice is just us, it's okay if it doesn't harm others.
I don't think they're just about white farmers, my darling. Like, at what point do you guys realize that without the farmers, you starve?
If it's done at the expense of other people, it's said. But that said, my friend and colleague Louis van Rijn wrote an article that is in the Sunday Times today. We need a new story. We need a new Afrikaner story.
We need a new Afrikaner story. And you guys have been pleading apartheid oppression for 30 years. When do we get a new black story? A new apartheid story? You know what our new story is going to be? The oppression. And we can have 30 years of that, and then you can have another 30 years.
It's South Africa, hopefully, fellow white people, about how unequal South Africa was created and why we should all support measures to rupture that inequality.
What measures have any of you shown over the last 30 years? You know what this reminds me of? The woke ideology. When you see a debate happen and you have a scientist and you have your woke ideologist what person, there are no facts. It's just emotions and oppression and trauma and measurements for equality. But the scientist will be like, cool, but you've squandered 456 billion. You have more unemployment. Our GDP is stagnant. We need to have a 3% GDP just to deal with the unemployment problem. So where's your facts, my darling? Where's your measurements? Where's your facts? We have it. It's 30 years, and you know what our facts show? Zero. 0% success, 0% growth, 0% population growth. Where's your facts? Stop with this narrative. It's disgusting.
Created by law and rebuild an equal society.
So would you say that this, the AfriForum's white genocide narrative is undermining progress made in South Africa's racial reconciliation effort?
Absolutely.
You build houses for the poor and forget to put electricity in it. You
the invention of the myth of the white genocide definitely is undermining the transformative constitutionalism that we've been trying to push
For 30 years.
in the last 30 years. And the new measures.
Oh, we've been trying to, the amount of times these people talk about new committees, new measures, new policies every year.
Trying to strike a new pact, a new deal to fast track progress because we can't.
I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I cannot believe that there is somebody alive who has the galls to go onto TV and spew this sort of lies, this division, this racist narrative that technically doesn't exist. Because if you'd all held the ANC accountable, the government you voted in, if you had actually stood up and held them accountable, none of this would happen. But the fact that this little tutu lady, the fact that you think this is okay, let me not find a cross around your neck.
Society in transition forever. In fact, a lot of people
No, you're right.
are losing interest in the Constitution and asking for a new dispensation. And yet there's a lot of beauty.
What? See, now this is how they plant seeds, because I have not heard a single discussion about the changing the constitution. We're tired of, it's an old constitution. Now they've planted a seed. Somebody's going to pick this up. It's going to become a huge discussion.
Constitution is properly used. But people, such as those in the African Forum, have to accept that under the new constitutional order, we're all ordinary.
Under the new constitutional, what? The new constitutional order, we're all ordinary. So I wonder how much all of this is that you're wearing, my darling. Is that ordinary? Because I'm unemployed. And I'm not ordinary. And all of the little kids in school, they're not ordinary. They're amazing. Yet you keep messing up the hiring of teachers, the building of schools, the maintaining of schools. And then you think it's okay that at 2,000 Rand a desk, these little kids now have to carry your lack of production. Sorry, I'm losing it.
Have the same rights and freedoms. And in those rights and freedoms, Section 9(2) of the Constitution allows special measures to be taken to redress imbalances that were created by injustices.
She's literally saying that they're working towards changing the Constitution. That's what she's busy saying. They're busy looking into how to change the Constitution because their method for the last 30 years hasn't worked. And now they're going to try even harder. I'm horrified. I'm shocked.
In the Constitutional Court, in Minister of Finance versus Van Heerden, they said it's not just allowing those special measures that the Constitution wants. If you read Section 9 together with Section 7 on the duty to advance human rights, then the duty on the South African government is to take those special measures to redress inequalities. And that makes me, Masichaba, to sneak in the third issue, that bringing in that would exacerbate inequalities instead of reducing inequalities as dictated by the Constitution in terms of Section 937 and Section 237.
I don't know what to say. I cannot believe that this is what's going out to the people.
Now, before I let you go, Professor, are there any alternative organizations or initiatives in South Africa that perhaps you think are doing more effective and inclusive work on social justice issues, particularly around land reform, economic empowerment, racial reconciliation?
Wow. Wow. This is disgusting reporting as well. Because where's the 30 years? Hold on, can we talk about the 30 years? And you want to sneak in the little VAT discussion? Bitch, you've stolen 456 something billion rand unaccounted for. Parliament report says so. Parliament report says for the last 5 years, I've been telling you that corruption and mismanagement and lack of accountability is the reason we're in this condition. Something like 51 SEOs are in a near dire critical state, unsure of whether they can and cannot continue. But who's taking accountability for that? Because you guys are the ones who've been looking after it for the last 30 years. So don't talk to me about inequality, madam, sitting there with that outfit.
There are many such. For example, the church movement, which is very instrumental, Masichaba, in building apartheid, starting in the early 20s when they perceived the problem of white poverty, and then decided to ask government to pass laws to create this white exceptionalism. The church movement today is working with communities to reverse that. And my colleague Kumla Kobodo works with the son of the architect, well, the grandson of the architect of apartheid himself, Deadwood, to get communities to converse about what happened and how the shadow of that past remains with us until we deal with it.
Until we deal with it. And you guys are the ones who are reminding the youth that this is the horrible image. This is the terrible stuff we did. But over and over and over, you guys are living in your self-pity. Because without this narrative, without the narrative of oppression, you have nothing to put on the table. Absolutely nothing. And for that alone, you should be ashamed of yourself.
And then there are movements such as the Institute for Economic Justice that bring together black and white people to deal with the shadow of the past.
Economic justice.
SA itself. I've had several conversations with AgriSA, and AgriSA.
Economic justice. They just signed in the new Oki for SAA, knowing full well that it's a mess. Transnet just paid over R1 billion into an account that only got opened the day before. Economic justice. Yo, lady, yo.
Does its best to encourage the farming community in particular to take special measures on its own without waiting for the law to redistribute land, because it's just criminal. But
yeah, it's criminal that you're stealing all this money from us. It's criminal that you guys lease, when you take those farms over, you lease them to the black man. You lease it. He does not get his title deed. How disgusting.
Country where black people are 80% of the community.
And yet you've achieved fuck all in the last 3 years, 30 years, excuse me.
Those people own only 4% of the land. It just doesn't make sense.
Because you own all the title deeds.
It's a recipe for fracture.
It's a recipe for sanctions, my darling. It's a recipe for sanctions.
All right. Professor, last question or last question. How far do you think we've come when it comes to racism in our society?
0, because of you. Because you're driving a cuck, racist, divisive narrative on the only channels that reach the majority. Be ashamed of yourself.
Well, when you see things like the AfriForum, Masichaba, you get the impression that, oh my God, we're very far behind. The truth, though, is a little bit more complex and a little bit more nuanced. I think we've come a long way. Firstly, we now all enjoy civil and political rights, and nobody can be discriminated with the force of the law. If you discriminate directly or indirectly, you can take this matter to the equality.
Yeah, we can take it to the equality court. Whether or not you guys do anything with it is the next question. Again, look at your metrics. Great. This recent South African Human Rights Commission debacle is a very good example of how you're literally lying on camera.
Or you can take it to the Human Rights Commission, and it can go right as far as the Constitutional Court. And therefore, that's progress. We have employment equity laws, which, although they have not achieved equality in the workplace, but they've diminished white dominance. I mean, white men, for example, now occupy, or white people now occupy 65% of top management in the country, despite white people being 7.5%. But that's progress, given the fact that past law.
The fact that it took you 30 years to get here
did not allow a Black person, no matter how highly educated, no matter how highly competent and highly appropriate for the position they were. I mean, somebody writes, for example, about how even stores that serve primarily Black people, they were not allowed to have Black supervisors. And that's past. Gender inequality is still undermined by gender-based violence. But the fact that you and I are having this conversation, me being in one of the best universities in the world,
let's just glance over the gender-based violence. We'll just glance over it, like, get that out the way and discuss my amazing position in...
And being in a prime position.
Yes, and achieving nothing.
Says we have gone somewhere. However, too many are still left behind. The most...
Your population growth, you cannot keep up transformation at the rate of your population. On top of the fact that you haven't built schools to keep up with the population. So you, in your own doing, have created a population that cannot be hired because you haven't built enough schools or educated them on population, not population control, but safe sex.
For society in the world, we really need to do something about it.
Yes, we do.
Professor, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for your time.
Thank you to you too.
I can't believe that was aired. I cannot believe that this is the narrative our media will let go out there. I'm boiling. I'm so angry right now. Just to think of what a beautiful country we could have. Instead, these greedy little things steal from the poorest of the poor. We are some of the nicest people in this world. And then we have politicians like this. You should all be ashamed of yourself.